Sacramento, California. A charming, unassuming Victorian house stood at 1426 F Street. It was the picture of domesticity, run by a seemingly kind, elderly woman named Dorothea Puente. She was known for her warm smile, her generosity with homemade meals, and her unwavering dedication to caring for the less fortunate. Her boarding house was a haven for those down on their luck, recovering alcoholics, the mentally disabled, the elderly. Little did they know they were entering a house of horrors. Beneath the veneer of kindness lurked a heart of stone. Dorothea Puente was not the caregiver she pretended to be. She was a cunning predator, masking her sinister secret behind the facade of a sweet old lady. Her weapon of choice? Poison? Her victims? The very souls entrusted to her care. Dorothea Puente, the death house landlady, was a master manipulator. She used her charm to disarm her victims, their trust becoming their downfall. She created a carefully constructed world of normalcy, where poisoned meals were passed off as acts of kindness, and missing persons were dismissed as simply moving on with their lives. Alvaro Montoya, a regular at the local halfway house, vanished. His social worker, Judy Mays, grew suspicious. Montoya had mentioned feeling uneasy at the boarding house. He spoke of spiked drinks and a growing sense of dread. Judy, familiar with the boarding house and its seemingly harmless landlady, decided to investigate. She approached Dorothea, inquiring about Montoya's whereabouts. Dorothea, cool and collected, feigned ignorance. She claimed Montoya had left weeks ago, off to start a new life. But Judy was not convinced. There was something amiss, a palpable sense of wrongness that clung to the air in that house. Driven by a gnawing suspicion, Judy contacted the Sacramento Police Department. They, too, had heard whispers about the strange occurrences at 1426 F Street. Missing persons reports, always ending with Dorothea's claims of the residents moving on, had become a recurring theme. The police decided to pay the boarding house a visit. Dorothea, ever the gracious host, welcomed the officers inside. She answered their questions with a disarming naivete, claiming to know nothing of Alvaro Montoya's whereabouts or any suspicious activity at her boarding house. The officers, however, noticed something peculiar: freshly dug soil in the backyard. It was a small detail, easily overlooked, but it was enough to pique their suspicion. Armed with a search warrant, the police returned to the boarding house on F Street. The idyllic facade began to crumble as the officers dug into the freshly turned soil. First, a single bone, then another, and another. The gruesome discovery sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. Beneath the rose bushes and the carefully tended flower beds, the bodies of Dorothea's victims lay buried. 7 bodies in total, each one a testament to her cold-blooded cruelty. The news of the discovery spread like wildfire. Neighbors, once accustomed to seeing Dorothea tending her garden, now recoiled in horror. How could this seemingly harmless old woman be responsible for such unspeakable acts? As the bodies were exhumed and identified, the true extent of Dorothea's crimes became horrifyingly clear. She had been systematically poisoning her tenants, cashing their social security checks, and burying their bodies in her backyard. It was a calculated, chillingly efficient operation. No one suspected the sweet old lady who baked pies for the neighborhood. The police, now certain of Dorothea's guilt, launched a manhunt. She had vanished, melting into the crowd with an ease that spoke to her cunning and experience. Dorothea Puente, the seemingly harmless landlady, became one of America's most wanted. Her face, once a symbol of kindness, was plastered on newspapers and television screens across the country. Tips poured in, each one a testament to the collective shock and disgust that rippled through the nation. How could someone who appeared so ordinary be capable of such extraordinary evil? Section 5. A past marred with deceit. As the investigation deepened, a darker picture of Dorothea Puente emerged. Her past, it turned out, was a tapestry woven with lies, deceit, and violence. She had a history of fraud, forgery, and even served time for drugging and robbing an elderly man she had befriended. Dorothea Puente was a chameleon, adapting her persona to fit the situation, always with an ulterior motive in mind. Days turned into a week. The search for Dorothea Puente intensified. The public was captivated by the case, a macabre blend of horror and disbelief. How could someone so unassuming, so seemingly ordinary, be capable of such monstrous acts? Finally, after 9 days on the run, Dorothea Puente was apprehended in Los Angeles. She had befriended an elderly man at a bar, her charm still potent, her true nature masked behind a veneer of vulnerability. But her luck had run out. A tip from a vigilant bartender led to her capture, bringing an end to her reign of terror. Section 6. Unraveling the motive, greed, and a trail of bodies. The trial of Dorothea Puente was a media sensation. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, painting a picture of a cold, calculating killer driven by greed. They detailed her meticulous methods, her manipulation of the vulnerable, and her callous disregard for human life. The defense, on the other hand, attempted to portray her as a misguided but ultimately harmless woman, a victim of circumstance. They argued that she was simply trying to help those in need, albeit in her own unconventional way. The jury, however, was unswayed. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Dorothea Puente was found guilty on 3 counts of murder. The jury deadlocked on the remaining 6. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Section 7. Justice, but at what cost? Dorothea Puente, the death house landlady, died in prison in 2011 at the age of 82. She took her secrets to the grave, leaving behind a legacy of pain, fear, and unanswered questions. The families of her victims found a semblance of justice in her conviction, but the scars of her crimes ran deep. The house on F Street, once a symbol of warmth and welcome, stood as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface. The horrors that unfolded within its walls served as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance and the vulnerability of those living on the fringes of society. Section 8. The Ghosts of F Street. The house on F Street still stands today, a silent sentinel to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. It has been renovated, repainted, and even housed a recording studio for a time, but the shadows of the past linger. Some say the house is haunted, the restless spirits of Dorothea's victims unable to find peace. Regardless of whether one believes in ghosts, there is an undeniable heaviness that permeates the air around 1426 F Street. It is a somber reminder of the fragility of life, the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of the ordinary, and the enduring power of evil. Section 9. The Enduring Enigma of Dorothea Puente. Dorothea Puente remains an enigma, a puzzle that criminologists and psychologists continue to grapple with. How could a woman who appeared so ordinary be capable of such calculated cruelty? Was she a psychopath, a sociopath, or simply a product of a troubled past? There are no easy answers, no satisfying explanations for the darkness that resided within Dorothea Puente. She was a master manipulator, a skilled actress who played her role to perfection, all the while hiding a heart of stone behind a facade of sweetness and light. Section 10. Lessons Learned, Vulnerability, and Vigilance. The case of Dorothea Puente serves as a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of those living on the margins of society. The elderly, the disabled, the mentally ill, they are often targeted by predators who prey on their perceived weakness. It is a sad reality that highlights the need for greater awareness, support, and protection for those most at risk. The case also underscores the importance of vigilance. Evil often wears a mask of normalcy, hiding in plain sight. It is imperative that we remain aware of our surroundings, trust our instincts, and speak out when something doesn't feel right. Section 11. Beyond the Headlines. The Psychology of a Killer. The case of Dorothea Puente continues to fascinate and horrify, serving as a grim reminder of the potential for darkness that resides within the human heart. It is a case that transcends the headlines, prompting us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil, the complexities of the human psyche, and the fragility of life itself. The story of Dorothea Puente is a cautionary tale, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that monsters often hide in plain sight. It is a story that forces us to confront the darkness that exists within our world and within ourselves, and to strive for a society where such horrors are never repeated.